right. Well, it's 9:01. Let's just go ahead and get started. Folks can join or listen to this recording in the future. Good morning, everyone. I'm Anne-Marie Fernandez. I'm a senior product solutions marketing manager. What that means is really I try to bring out the product features and stories for risk, basically videos, and help everyone understand the tool a little bit better and how to use it. And with us, we've got John.
Hello, good morning. My name is John Quintanilla. I am a principal business process consultant within our expert services department here at ServiceNow. I focus on implementations, is really what it is. I help customers implement our solutions, specifically risk and compliance, and help them be successful in using our tool and helping their users use it.
Awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Just a couple housekeeping things. If we've got some time at the end for Q&A, use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. We'll answer those instead of the chat. That way we can get the questions recorded and we can answer them later on if we run out of time. And obviously this presentation is recorded and it will be shared on the community a couple days or a week after. And at the end of the event, please fill out the survey. Really helps us understand how we can be better and answer any questions and improve as well. Oops. Is that right? Oh, yeah. And then on Thursday, we've got a follow-up session, office hours. It's a 30-minute not recorded session to follow up and deep dive a little bit more on some of these questions. If you've got deeper product questions, we can go in and take a look at things together, or just kind of free form answer any questions that you have this Thursday at 8:30 Pacific.
Awesome. And so as I mentioned earlier, I'm on the expert services team, risk and resilience team. And so again, we are a group of experts, technical consultants and process experts that will work with you and work with your stakeholders to understand your use cases and implement the solutions that we have, whether it be IRM, BCM, ESG. We have a lot of VRM, all the different solutions that we have. We work together closely. And the best part about it is that you can obviously, there's partners out there that you can work with that are great. Also, we love our partners, but sometimes we want a little bit more close to home expertise, and that's where we come in as expert services within ServiceNow.
Awesome. All right, so quick agenda. Obviously, we did the introductions. Then we're going to get right into talking about common engagement challenges. What does engagement look like for an IRM program? And then also how to approach engagement in your organization. It's not a lot of time, so we want to just give you some quick bites, effective things that you can take and implement right away. And then obviously for these sessions, we like to spend a good amount of time on a demo. So we're going to focus on obviously the features and how ServiceNow actually intended the tool to engage your stakeholders. And then we'll wrap up and answer any questions. So the first question is, John, for you, is stakeholder engagement in IRM implementation different from other implementations such as ITSM, PPM, or HR? And if so, how?
Yeah, so in my experience, I believe it is, right? And really, as you can see on the right-hand side, risk happens whether you manage it or not. Meaning, if you're working with an employee workflow or something like that, you only engage it if it's going on. But in risk is everywhere and it's everybody's job, as the second bullet says, right? You will need to interface with all levels of the board, the C-levels, the risk teams, to IT, to the frontline. Risk happens everywhere and anywhere. That's why IRM as an implementation is a little different from some of the other solutions that we might have, is because your stakeholder levels can be at the highest level, or it could also be your customer. Your customer could even be a way that they are introducing risk into what you're doing, and you're trying to collect information and data from that. So that's really where the difference lies within IRM implementations and engagement.
Awesome. All right.
So again, when we're talking about managing risk, right, and resiliency and everyone's responsibility, you can see where we obviously start with the employee and what they're interacting with on a daily basis. So whether you're taking a call or phone call or something like that, or you identify something, and then from there it goes all the way up from a business leader to a corporate function to a senior leadership to a board of directors, right? So the information that's being captured at the first line is what we call gets pushed all the way up through all the way out to the board of directors, and even sometimes with external partners, right? When you have regulators like the OCC and things like that, the bank, depending on who you're talking to. But all of the work that is captured and done, excuse me, is typically at the employee level. And finding a solution and working with a solution like ServiceNow, where we try to balance not only the work that is being done at the first line and how the information is shared across channels, is something that's really key when it comes to risk and compliance. When you talk about risks and controls, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's because accountability is at every level, right?
That's right. Accountability, even responsibility for standpoint, right? Even consulting, right? We're going to talk about a RACI later, but the consulting, the information, all that stuff, everything that you're providing from an IRM perspective, from risk, can span across multiple channels in our organizations.
Absolutely.
So this is a good example, right? Where we were talking about the frontline business users right in the center. Now, you can have multiple second line of defense partners that are asking for information, right? If you talk about operational risk, you talk about enterprise risk, you talk about third-party risk, compliance, all of these partners are responsible analysts that have to provide information about our risk and what we're doing. But we're also all going to the frontline user to collect that information. And we're saying, hey, give me this info, give me that info. I need more details. I need more information. This poor person, I say this poor person because not only do they have the responsibility of performing their daily job function, now they're also having to stop and explain all the information, maybe 5, 6, 7 times. That's the same information, but it's just siloed and shared disparately across multiple lines, right? And so the other thing that breaks down here is first, second, and even third line, right? So third line also needs information sometimes. Audit will come in and they'll start to ask questions. Right. So that's why I love this illustration, because it really shows how this one single person is being asked to provide multiple details about the same situation, the same occurrence, the same issue, the same event, whatever you want to call it. And they're having to share it with multiple people to collect the same information.
And when you go into your implementations, do you see that each of these groups, the resilience team, the risk team, the compliance team, have their own tool? Is that common?
It is common. It is common for everybody to have their own way of managing it, right? Sometimes, one area will have Excel, another area will be using SharePoint, another area will be a lot more sophisticated and they'll already have ServiceNow. Another area will have Archer, another area will have like Audit loves to use Teammate Plus. So you've got all these different systems that are in place, and they're asking this frontline user to provide information into all these different tools in order to collect the data, right? And so that makes it really challenging. Not only do they have to know their job, but now they have to know all these different technology mediums on how to actually report the information.
Right. And good luck reporting it up.
Yeah, the aggregation, right? Because all these enterprise risk, third party, all of these are going to have C-level executives that are going to want data and want to know, where are my hot zones in my area? That's the one. What is my hot zone? Where's my red? Well, each one, you're going to have to aggregate some of this data. How do you bring all that together with disparate sources, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. So guys, we've got our only poll question, just one quick poll question to get a feel for the team here or the folks on the line. What is the top challenge you face in operationalizing a risk culture in your organization today? They may all apply. So just kind of let us know what your top one is if you had to pick one. So we'll give you a couple seconds to reply. Okay, awesome. I think that's actually everyone, John.
Okay, cool. 50-50, organizational silos and lack of maturity in standardized or documented business process, which is the highest number we see even ourselves in our implementation work that we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of those are a function of the other ones, right? So not having terminology, not making compliance a focal point leads
That's
to,
right.
it's like a negative cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we touched on some of these, right? Organizational silos is a big one. It's really difficult when you have multiple executives with multiple goals and everybody has their understanding and their view and their approach on how to solve the problems, especially when it comes to risk and compliance, right? The other one was that I saw on there was, unstandardized processes. And while we may think that that is the biggest challenge, the standardization of the process, that's where something like a ServiceNow tool can really come in and help, because our tool, the ServiceNow tool is not only flexible in being able to work the workflow and add approvals and add reviews, but it can also be useful for areas to mature, right? You can implement the solution at a very what I like to call a start point, and then as your organization matures, as the processes mature, as they get documented, as they grow, your solution can now mature with it and be scalable as we release more stuff. So that's really the cool part. But the organizational silos from an engagement perspective is really, I think, the biggest key, right? Is how do we bring all of these partners together? How do we have these conversations? That's really what they are. How do we have these conversations to write down what are the requirements? What do we really need? What's the baseline? And that's what I like to bring on here. But the other thing to point out too, right? You'll see some of these lack of system integrations. These are things that we talked about, right? No aggregated view, point in time risk assessments. These are all things that we're talking about as the challenges of having disparate sources of data and having multiple tools in flight that are trying to capture the same data.
Yep. Excellent.
So let's talk a little bit about those organizational silos, right? So if you, excuse me, one of the things that we talk about is from identifying an issue perspective, 80% should be identified from the frontline user, 20% from the second line, and then 10% at the third line. That would constitute a healthy risk model for your organization to say, most of the stuff we're identifying them early. We're presenting preventative controls, detective controls. We're getting these in flight and we're getting these in place and we're getting these early on, right? And then our second line is coming in and they're doing oversight and they're helping us grow and mature those processes and how we document. And then hopefully third line is coming in and just saying, hey, let me rubber stamp that. Yes, it's looking great. We don't have any issues identified, right? That's kind of how this plays out. But the cool part or the important part about this is all of these people need a seat at the table, right? We can't, that's engaged. That is what real engagement is. If we only build if we only implement a solution with the second line in mind, risk and compliance teams only, and they're siloed with their IT team and we're building it for them, we sometimes lose sight of the experience for the first line user, number one. And number two, we sometimes miss to make the connection with what third line needs to capture, right? So if we only use one party in here to build our tools, that's really where engagement falls apart, right? Like, so and that engagement piece starts off early, right? It's not like, oh, hey, I've got this, let me go communicate it. It's not a change management strategy. It's I've got to engage people early to understand what are those challenges and how am I going to implement that going forward.
Right. So even if you're a new IRM program, low maturity, just have one use case, you're saying we still need to consider these three levels of.
It's best to, even if it could be one simple use case to say, you know what, I've got one area with one small group of users that I'm only, it's not huge, it's not big, but it's still important to bring in the sight of first, second, and third line when you're building a comprehensive risk and compliance program.
Right, exactly. So not only the work, the heavy lifting, but getting the stakeholders, the business engaged, and also thinking about how you're going to report that up to audit or the board.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. I like that. All right. So, too many arrows.
Yeah, but these are what we're talking about with the boards, right? And coming in. Now, engage, embed, and evolve, right? That's the biggest. I love the 3 E's. What we call the 3 E's, a simple repeat approach. Now, the good thing about engage is this is where we talk about you take your business leaders, your leadership, and you find a way to either through like voice of the customer or interviews. You can do regular interviews, and as you can see on the bottom, these are the different frameworks or the different areas that we're looking at, right? So if you're looking at regulatory regulatory management, indicator management, policy, control testing, all these areas are going to have executives or business leaders that have input in the approach of what they're trying to accomplish. So one aspect is the engage piece. The second piece would be the embed, right? Embed common risk and compliance libraries. This is where on the questions we asked, the nomenclature or the library, the governance structure, has anybody spent any time kind of identifying what those parameters might be for the development and the building of a risk library, of a control library, of a policy management library, right? And then after that is evolve. So the evolve piece is the indicators and automated factors and accelerators. So this is the fun part, right? once we've got the people involved, once we've established governance, then we can actually get faster about what we're trying to accomplish, right? We try to move off of manual processes and manual testing into indicators and automated factors and stuff. But the thing about this, it's and the reason it says rinse and repeat approach is because it's constant. It doesn't stop, right? The engagement can't be just on front and then say, okay, I got everything you need. I'll see you later. I'm going to go build. And then I go build, and then I come back, and then all of a sudden say, well, wait a minute. I guess I misunderstood your requirements because this is what I got. And I know that's not what I needed, right? And so that's why the rinse and repeat approach is important, that periodically throughout your implementation, throughout your IRM program, you can do it quarterly. I mean, so in my experience, I was a product manager for 10 years at another institution. And every quarter I would meet with every executive. I had it on my calendar. Every quarter I would meet with them and say, hey, these are the things that we're delivering. These are the things that we've worked on. What are the new challenges you're getting, right? Because they've already met with the regulators, they've met with the board members, and now it's evolved. Now it's increased or it's escalated, right? I need to know what are those new things so that we can be agile in our project delivery and keep working that out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think this slide, maybe we could have made it a 1, 2, 3, but it does kind of go in that order. And whether let me know if you agree or not, John. So I feel like it starts with engage. It starts with the people. Like we could say we start with process, and we could start with process. We can embed and involve. But if we never go back to engaging people, it's not a full program, right? Or it's not really a full, like, you're getting the information you need or feel good about the clarity of the information, right? So the risk assessments need to go out to frontline. You have to have control owners, right? You can have processes, but I think people shy away from engaging because nobody wants to talk about risk and nobody really wants to talk about control, but we have to, right?
Well, think about this. If we ignore the people side, then we are automatically introducing operational risk into our projects, right? Because what is operational risk? It's people, process, and technology, right? So if I look at embed and I look at evolve, this is my process, embed is my process, and evolve is my technology. But if I ignore the engage and I ignore the people, I have automatically introduced operational risk into my project, right? That's why it's important to look at all three of these from an operational risk perspective and say people, process, and technology. Where are we at?
Right. So what this is saying is really leverage your people to then embed the risk and embed the controls.
That's right.
Into the processes. And then from there, you can do awesome things.
Yeah.
All right. So did you want to?
So I mean,
reference slide.
Well, I mean, this is IRM and CSDM. So CSDM is common service delivery model. It's common service data models. we get confused with our acronyms. Common service data model, and the reason it's important is because IRM risk management is really a piece of all of the data that you've got going on, right? You can see on the very bottom in the green box, you'll have things like company units, department, locations, support groups, processes. These things are sometimes they're already documented. Sometimes they're not. We're struggling to document it. We had that poll question, but you'll also have the infrastructure data, right? cloud resources, printers, endpoints, databases, servers. All this together becomes your common service data model. All of this information is what is then fed up through risk and controls. As you document your processes, as you document, for example, something as simple as single sign-on, right? When I single sign-on onto my laptop, especially right now in this new virtual world where everybody has this, I have to know, I have an application, I have applications that are being managed by single sign-on. They're in specific locations. Sometimes they impact me globally, sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes there's support groups, all that information then gets fed in through IRM, through audit, through risk management, compliance, risk, and audit. And then you have your risk and controls that are put in. You can see the green box in the middle that's called entities, right? Intra-CIs, services, applications, departments, vendors, groups, users. Those are what you would call databases or data to this common service data model that's on the bottom. That's how they come into IRM. So if you haven't established the foundational data, now engagement-wise, sometimes these all have different leaders that are responsible for different items, right? So that's what I'm saying. If you have a very small use case, that's easier, right? I can go work with that individual and I can start to build that out. And we also, when we're doing implementation, we also recommend to say, hey, can we build this out with a few use cases first, get really good at it, and then we'll start to scale and bring everybody else on board once we're comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So this just kind of tries to bring it all together for you.
Absolutely. All right. So I see Dan's got a question, but let's do the demo real quick and then we'll get back to the question.
Okay.
Renee. All right. So now let's do a quick demo. John, do you want to go ahead and start?
I'll take it. All right. We should have my screen. You should be able to see the service portal. That's what we call the service portal.
Mm-hmm.
This is a little bit outdated. I know we're working on a new and improved version of it. I know our product team has already been working on that. But the main point of what I want to do here is, as we were talking about engagement, that there's first, second, and third line, and how they use it and how we use the tool can fluctuate very much. From a first line user perspective, I've got to remember, I've got systems that I'm working with that it's either in customer service where I'm taking phone calls and I'm having to report tickets and I'm having to do all that stuff for whatever I'm working. It could be I'm in front of a client and I'm meeting with a client. And so I can't have a very complicated front page that just throws everything at me, right? So the service portal is really from an end user perspective. You could see they've got very simple buttons here: request something, knowledge base, get help. But the other cool thing from a risk and compliance perspective is we can have this little button here that allows them to do some of the work that they need to do from a GRC perspective, right? So you can see my risk events, my policy exceptions, my issues. So if they find an issue that they want to report, they can click on my issues and they would go in here and report an issue. Right now, I'm in as Jacob Williams. He's actually a compliance manager. So he would just report an issue through here. Now, you would select some basic information, right? The good thing about this, it's not meant to be extremely lengthy because this is just the starting point. This is just the beginning point, right? I just want to get this introduced as something that I might have a problem. And so I'm bringing this in, right? So that's why you would do that. In some cases, you might be looking at a policy and you say, you know what, I need to submit a policy exception because of something that I'm working on. You can submit it through here, new policy exception, and you would fill out the information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is the main point of this first screen is really just to be, how can I get simple items in front of my first line users with simplicity for them to report and give information for either our second line to then take and work and mature it and what do you call it? Enhance the information as you go deeper. Right. Now, the other part, now, when we move over to second, I'm still as Jacob. You can see here, Jacob Williams. He's a corporate compliance manager, is his user base. Now, when he comes in, he goes to something called a compliance workspace. I've got a bunch of them on here, but this is a compliance workspace. And on here, as a compliance manager, I've got a few things that I'm looking at, right? I'm looking at authoritative documents, which are regulations that you have to report on, some internal policies that I might be responsible for. These are the entities that are tied to it. Now, the cool thing, you can see a compliance score is assigned to some of these. Right. So business records and media management. This is a policy that I have to, and it's a high priority. There's 4 high priority issues. I can click on here to see my compliance score at 81%.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming up, sorry. Come on. All right. Now, we can see that the policy, business records and media management, it's already been published. It's 81% compliant, right? The compliant, what's non-compliant can tell you here, and what is compliant, I'm sorry, excuse me. These are the entities that are associated with it. Remember, entities could be applications, it could be any type of product, process. So these are the items, the entities that are associated with this policy, and it tells you their compliance score. You can go even deep dive even further and find out. Here's the controls that are associated with this policy. It can tell you 542 are active. The green ones, which are 262, are compliant. And right now, 9 are not compliant. 2% are not compliant. And then you've got some that are not applicable. Sometimes the not applicable just means it hasn't been tested, hasn't been related, that kind of stuff. The other cool thing about this compliance workspace is, as a compliance manager, you know, sometimes there's work to be done. So I can go to my tasks and I can see what pending tasks I have, right? From an engagement perspective, maybe there's an evidence request task that I've been pending that I need to submit. Maybe there's an issue that I haven't looked at yet that's been assigned to me, right? And the priority on it. And then there's also a groups task. So sometimes the people that I work with, they have stuff that got to get done, and maybe somebody's out of the office. I can go to my groups task and kind of help jump in on some of these if I need to work through them, right? Here's a policy exception that's been submitted. I need to review it and see, am I going to approve it or not going to approve it, that kind of stuff, and I will click in on it. So this is the compliance workspace for a compliance manager. Anne-Marie, you want to take it over from the risk workspace?
Yeah, sure. So let me just grab it. All right, guys. So I was just going to demo the risk workspace and a little bit of audit, which will actually lead us into Dan's question about control tests, I believe. So here's the risk workspace. I'm logged in as Andrew Taylor, which should be the same persona that's in your instances if you use a free instance from developer ServiceNow developer.servicenow.com. So you see it's really similar to the compliance workspace, but obviously it's you go to risk workspace, you land here. What I wanted to focus in on, you'll see a lot of similarity to the compliance on this left nav. There's the home, there's your list of tasks, and then there's issue management application, which is central to all of GRC. If you guys haven't gone through the training, meaning if there's a risk issue, a compliance issue, an audit issue, if you have anything assigned to you or to your team, this is the same. It's one place that you can sort of track all the issues that need to be worked on. And then obviously the list, which I'll go through. But I wanted to focus in on this right here in the middle, which is the risk heat map. This was new in Tokyo, I believe. So again, I'm in as Andrew Taylor. I'm using the risk assessment methodology, operational risk management, so I can get to this risk heat map. And you can click on this, I forgot what it's called, seismic technology or something. So I can launch it. And this is where sort of the dream was, you know, you take all your Excel files, you put them in a risk, you want to be able to have that data aggregate in real time. And okay, obviously it's super slow. So this is where they sort of aggregate into all the risks, and it puts it into a nice heat map. But why this supports a conversation is that it's intended to show you can go right from, you know, picking one of these risks here, and you can see sort of the risk trending. What was the, oh my gosh, I forgot the one that we wanted to show. Anyways, so you can see here, you can see the risk trend. So if you've done a risk assessment over time, you'll be able, so this one, there was one risk assessment done April 23rd. Over time, you can see, like, is this going up or down? So this is the way that ServiceNow intends to provide business context around each of the risks. And the way that these data points go on here is through sending out a risk assessment. All right, so the other thing from here, you can also change the risk assessment methodology. You can focus in on a specific entity. You can change it from inherent to residual. And then you can also search. So let's just say you're looking for anything that has to do with vulnerabilities. So all the risks that have to do with vulnerabilities will show here. So you could click on it, look at the risk trend, and you've just saved yourself a ton of time instead of going through all the assessments in Excel and that sort of thing. And you can go right into it. And the idea is, instead of collating this information, waiting weeks or days, and then putting it in a PowerPoint, the idea is, your board of directors or managers or business unit wants to know the risks for their area, just hop right into the risk heat map. So, all right, so that is the risk heat map. And so again, similar to what John was showing, the list of tasks, risk tasks. So I'm the risk manager, so it's only showing the risk tasks. Sorry, it's really slow, but it's not that exciting, so I'm just gonna move on. And then here's issue management. Again, what's nice is this little thing right here, which tells you what the new issues are in the last 30 days. So you can take a look at those. And then obviously all the nice sort of graphs and charts that you can follow up on. Here are evidence request tasks. Those come from the audit side, so you can take a look at anything there. And then here are your lists. So all the lists, so this is your common risk library, the control library, and then one specific to you that you own as a risk owner. All right, so that's it for risk. One thing you can do from here also is schedule a risk assessment, or go ahead and create a risk statement, a risk, ton of stuff here, create a control, or perform a control test. Let's see if this loads. I just wanted to show a risk assessment. If we have enough time. If not, we'll do it in office hours. Oh, this might take a while. All right, so let's just go to audit real quick. So this is the audit workspace. So basically you go to workspaces, and then audit workspace down here. It'll take you to this screen here. So again, similarities, you'll see the tasks, the issues overview, and then the lists again here. So audits, the way that they work is almost like projects, like mini project plans, which we call engagements. And so you'll see that here, it's a good way to look at, engagements that you have planned over time, total engagements here, any overdue, due in 30 days, and any that are upcoming. That way, because we know that audits can be very time intensive. So if you want to pace them out, like John was saying, the second line usually gets hit pretty hard with providing multiple pieces of information over and over. So you can schedule it out over time, right? So your ISO, your SOX, make sure not everybody's hit at the same time. And then just the tracking information here to look at what tasks are open, whether it's an interview, a walkthrough, control testing, and any sort of other activities that are needed, like opening, getting a report together, closing an audit. That's what these sort of more of generic activities are as well. All right, so these are the specific engagements or audits. If we take a look at one, like this year-end SOX financial one. You can see who's involved. So entities are the scope, meaning so there's finance, SAP accounting, and people financials are the folks that are part of this audit here. So there's a lot more to know here, but I just wanted to give you a high level overview of what.
And Marie,
yeah,
before you leave that, can you click on 360 view real quick?
yeah,
So here, I really love this part of it. And it happens with all the different, so you can do a 360 view from an audit engagement. You can do it from a risk assessment. You can do it from even a control assessment. And the cool thing is, based on that engagement, so in this case, we're talking about audit engagement. So based on this engagement, it'll show you all of the relational data that is associated with that engagement, right? So from risk to entities to controls, it'll tell you it's part of one plan. It's got audit tasks, control test issues, evidence requests that are pending. So if you wanted to know everything about this single engagement, the 360 view kind of gives you that. The cool thing is if you do it in a risk assessment, it's the same thing. The risk assessment will show you all the controls and risks that are associated with the entities to that actual risk assessment, right? And so just depending on what task or what activity you're doing, the 360 view can give you all of that information.
Yep. And just a quick tip for folks, if you haven't gone to the training, there is on Now Learning a nice little module that focuses just on audit, because audit is not covered in the regular in-person training. There's not enough time, but there is a specific module that kind of goes into audit in a lot more detail on Now Learning. Yes, and thank you, Isha, for putting that site in. All right, so we've got a little bit of time left. Let's go ahead and wrap things up. Did I miss anything, John? I think we're good, yeah?
Yeah, I think we did everything on the demo. This was the example of a RACI that we were talking about from an engagement perspective. For somebody, you know, if you've heard of a RACI before, it's really an acronym for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed parties. So you could think about from a project perspective, if I'm working on phase one, I'm in the planning stage or I'm in the design stage. These are the different contributing persons or stakeholders, right? An analyst, a project manager, your CIO, maybe chief risk officer, your lead SME. And then each letter represents what they're accountable for, or what their role is within that space of the project, right? So you can see when we're doing our planning, an analyst is really consulted about information that they need, but the plan, the CIO or the CRO may be the one that's responsible and accountable for that plan to get put in flight, right? Or, you know, when you get to the design phase, really the product specs, the responsible party at that point now becomes the analyst, and maybe the accountable person is the lead SME, because the subject matter expert should know what that product should be working and how it should be used. But then the CIO and the CRO move to an informed level, right? So it's really important to, and I always stress it when we first start off our projects, we love to do a stakeholder RACI to kind of understand not only at the beginning who they need to be, but this also starts to inform you from your change management perspective, right? This information, this informed stuff. How often should I communicate, and how often and when and how do I need to communicate when we're out there already?
Yep, absolutely. And then one little trick that we like to do, just because from the poll, folks were saying they have a lot of stakeholder engagement challenges, is take the same RACI, do what John was just saying, and then do a color rating. So if your responsible person is engaged, make that R a green. If you're not exactly sure, make that R a yellow. If they aren't engaged, make it a red. Once you get these letters colored, it'll kind of give you an idea where you can get your early wins and where you might have to sort of unblock some roadblocks.
Or even communicate to your leadership and say, hey, I know you want me to deliver this, right? But my engagement is red because these people, while we did a RACI, they're not really engaged. I've sent emails, I've made phone calls, ain't nobody getting back to me. How do you want me to do this, right? So this should really help you inform and help you leverage the engagement piece that you need to pull from people. It's a what do they call it? A push and pull with engagement. It really is. I got to push sometimes, and sometimes I got to pull, and it's this activity that I got to do with engagement.
That's right. All right. So a couple of key takeaways, John.
Yeah, so real quick, reality check the goals and breadth of your implementation, right? Ensure all stakeholders have a voice. So early on, as Anne-Marie said, if I only have one use case, that's okay. I may have 1,000 use cases. That's really hard to do. But we really want to do a reality check and really understand where we're at on that, right? Identify your key pain points and chat the effort versus impact, right? Like, how can we determine what is my low-hanging fruit and what are the quick wins that I can catch on really quickly so that we can build in excitement, right? It's part of engagement is excitement. So if I can get some quick wins out there and people are excited about what's coming, I can then get more engagement from them to build the harder things later. Know your CSDM. We talked about the common service data model, right? And leverage it, right? It's really important to understand how your common data components influence the entities into the GRC space, into the IRM space. Document stakeholders and build an engagement strategy. We talked about the RACI. We gave you that example. And then start governance as early as you can. It's never too early to establish that, really. And the governance can be from, if I've got a large scale enterprise, I may need to establish a portfolio level, maybe program manager, or assign a specific person that's responsible for engagement that kind of has this place going. Like just the governance piece of it, you can never start too early for it. Sometimes it may seem like, man, there's nobody involved. I don't really need governance, but even if it's just one single person involved, starting the process of establishing the governance will really help have the engagement that you need and really push your implementation along a lot further.
Absolutely. Oh, I did this wrong. All right, the title of this is wrong, but the time is right. So we're having office hours. This was our last webinar. The office hours for engagement is this Thursday at 8:30. It's a short 30-minute. Again, that time is wrong. I'm sorry. I'll fix it on the PowerPoint before we send it out. And just a couple resources to then connect with us. But before we go, there is a question in the chat, John, from Dan.
Where are we at here?
He's asking, what's your experience with third line being prepared to commit to a controlled design upfront in such a way that they can use ServiceNow as a basis for independent assurance?
Man, that's a good question. So as far as them being prepared to commit to a control design, again, that really goes back to the governance aspect of it, right? If I get a third line representative, I get my second line representative, and then I may have some influencing articles, whether it be from a regulator or something like that, and we establish that common design approach, right? Whether it be, like I said, ITGC, it'd be preventative, manual, detective, like how am I going to document this control? And once we can all come in an agreement and there's a governance around that, what the tool does, it helps you implement that governance, right, for you, because everybody's going to use the same control library. So the attributes that are assigned in your controls, everybody's going to use it. So when they go do a test in audit, they're going to use the control library that's already established there with the attributes and all that. That control test information that is fed will now go to second line. They use the same information. The result, the only difference is the test is now your operational piece of it, where the design is what's coming from your attributes in the control library. So the control library, your risk library, a lot of these authoritative documents, a lot of these items require you to spend a little time in coming together on what that should look like so that you can be able to build that common knowledge or the common nomenclature that you're talking about. But I do agree with you. Third line can sometimes be a little challenging when it comes to this stuff, because they want to. Here's the other thing to remember: it's the paradigm, right? Audit will look at controls as a holistic approach to a program, right? And sometimes second line will look at controls specific to a process, and that's all they're looking at, just that one little piece. And so sometimes there's a disconnect in how that control is documented because of the paradigm of the assessment or the engagement, if that makes sense. So I can see what you can talk about with those challenges.
Is control design also asking about Dan about how to test, like the actual control tests? In the ServiceNow world, we call them indicators.
It'll be the steps. Yeah. So when you design your control, there'll also be a test script for it, right? That says, this is how you should be testing it. Again, if we love to use control indicators to do that for us. So what it'll do is it'll say, you go to this table, and in that table, I want you to check these parameters, these filters, and give me my results. We love to use indicators to help standardize that so that it moves away from the manual side of it. Because the manual piece of it is I can give the steps to an auditor of what to do, but that's still human. That's still human. What do they call it? They've got to interpret what you're saying, right? Whereas if I set it up as an indicator, it could pull the data automatically for me. So there is some value in using the indicators for that.
Awesome. Yeah. And I was just showing here how there's the CIS indicators, essentially,
That's right.
that can help. And some of them are manual, like you're saying, or you can actually go ahead and leverage the data in the CMDB or in the platform, right? Not
That's
just
right.
CMDB,
And
but
now that indicator now establishes it for both third line and second line.
yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
you try to take away a little bit of that ambiguity in what they're trying to do in their design or their testing of the operational side of it.
So these are accelerator packs that you can download and just sort of get started. So, you know, you can use also say ServiceNow. These are the standard indicators, you know, and it's just something for you and your control owners or risk owners to then look at and poke at to
That's
get
right.
their engagement and buy in into the design.
That's right. I hope we answered your question, Dan.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, I think, were there any other questions? Okay. Oh, Dan's got a couple others. We still got time. For first line, is it your experience that they have an adequately developed understanding of effective internal control design to contribute to the development of the solution in ServiceNow?
No, that's hard, right? Because they're not a risk professional. They're not a compliance professional. They're there to perform the duties of their job. So for me to require them to understand how to adequately develop an effective internal control design would mean that I would then probably want to promote them to be a control manager, right? So no. But the cool thing about ServiceNow is that I can use the service portal to ask certain questions to drive that. We can even use something called Flow Designer that can allow you to ask questions that then triggers what you need done, right? We also have something called predictive intelligence, which can allow you to use something like clustering or it'll grab the information and then it'll say, hey, guess what? All these people are talking about the same thing. It's this one issue, right? That's called clustering. And so we have tools in ServiceNow that help close the gap in the knowledge space between my first line user and what my risk professional or my compliance professional needs to perform their job. That's usually what happens. There's a knowledge gap there that creates tension. And ServiceNow, what we try to do is we try to close that through tools that we can build within the ServiceNow or that we can plug in.
Awesome. Okay.
What else we got, Dan? I love this. To what extent do your customers calculate the compliance scores based on automated data extracts versus testing by asking specific questions to control performers and reviewers? Okay. Yeah, it depends on the size of the organization, Dan, really. I mean, in some cases, because you got to remember, and this is just my experience, working in risk and compliance, I've got this fear that I don't trust anybody or anything. Everybody, I always want to double check the checker kind of thing. So we work really diligently to demonstrate the value in the automated work of automatically calculating some of these results. And the way we do that is when we're implementing and we do tests, we'll run multiple tests, right, in various ways to show, like, look, we're coming up with the same score. We don't need to check the checker every single time, right? So it's just this is part of a culture change that we need to kind of see on that one. The risks that you are showing, is this based on an assessment calculation of impact for each control in case of control failure per entity? The risk that you are showing.
I think with the risk heat map, because it was kind of.
Oh, okay.
The risk assessment is based on an assessment calculation, as well as impact and likelihood, right? So we can probably deep dive into that on Thursday, Dan, if,
Yeah,
if you're able to come.
I think that'd be a
And
good,
talk
good
through
one.
that. But
Mixed
yeah,
authority appears several different places in the heat map. Is this because this same risk applies for different controls? Yes,
because it's the same risk for different entities.
entities.
And it could be for multiple controls. So there's a many-to-many relationship between risks and controls,
Mhm.
right? Because the same control can help mitigate different risks potentially. All right. Next one from Bola. Our team is in the process of capturing our controls and control testing in ServiceNow. Is there training to get out there to get us started on how to best set this up? Yes, there is a ton of information. Now Learning, Aisha has put that link. Go to nowlearning.com. There's a ton of on-demand courses you can take. There's also virtual training that you can take. And then there also if you go to Knowledge, our training team, our Taku team, they are awesome. So they're doing some trainings and some labs at Knowledge. So definitely check those out.
Can I add one little piece, Emery?
Yeah.
I will tell you this, and this is something that we would look at in every implementation. What I did not see in your question, Bola, is entities. Where's it at here? Did I miss it?
So, and entities is a ServiceNow word. So
It is. It
apologize
is.
in advance, but it's a very cool thing. Like entities can be frustrating, but they're also the secret magic to making risk and compliance work.
That's right. So when you say we're working on capturing all of our controls on our control testing, that's great. All I would say is associated to what? That's where entities come in. What are my controls, my control object? What are they associated to? Is an application, a process, an organization, a function, right? Like just keep that in mind is when you're establishing controls and control objectives and your control testing, all that is as it's associated to what? That's the only thing I would tell you. And so yes, entities is a ServiceNow nomenclature, but it's the power of GRC for us.
Absolutely. All right. Did I miss anything?
I think Dan was celebrating.
Okay. Awesome. Engagement is about educating first line. Absolutely. A lot of it. And that's with any project as well, right? You're educating them on, that's part of that organizational change management stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But using the RACI, understanding who's engaged, the red, yellow, green, and who's not, will help you craft your messages a lot more clearer.
Yep.
Yep, workload is important. My experience is that test of completeness is a concept that is not really well understood, even second line function.
Yeah, test of completeness. Again, I think it depends on the parameters of what you're establishing and what you're looking at in your test, right? I mean, you're right. Test of completeness as a whole, it could mean a lot of things because of the different, because of the different, what do you call it? The different industries that we're working with, right? For in the healthcare industry, okay, test of completeness is probably going to be 100%. Like you cannot fail or somebody dies, right? But in an operational perspective, from a bank, well, test of completeness could be at 90%, and I'm good. I'm gonna accept that risk, right? And so that's why it just the list of completeness when you say testing and verifying that, I totally agree, Dan. I think it varies. It varies by industry. It could vary by process. It could vary by area of function. It could be, I mean, yes, I think that's why test of completeness can be very vague and very gray for a lot of people. It's how they interpret what they're doing and what they're looking at.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. Okay. So Bola said that their entities are associated to applications. And so, and a lot of folks do this, which is, I like that answer because that's the easiest thing to get usually.
Oh, yeah.
List of business applications, which is part of the CSDM model, right? If we go back to, and we have just a couple minutes, this slide here, right? So your list of applications here, but work with someone it gets a little confusing, but once you understand it, it's not. There's application services and applications, and then there's also business applications in the CSDM model. The
That's
easiest
right.
list of applications is to get business applications. So as you're just starting out, you can use business applications, which is just sort of a logical model, not the actual executable files, right? Or instances of an application, right? So those are all accounted for in the CSDM model. But you can bring those in, and that's the most common and easiest list to get. You don't have to have every application listed in your application entity list, but just the ones that you want to manage controls and risks against to get started. So start with what you know.
And I know we're talking IRM, right? But when we start working with applications, we really try to plug in ITAM, right? Information application management and using the discovery tool to bring all that in. So there's a lot of great benefits with some of the other ones.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Any other last minute questions? I think we're good. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for your time. Thank you, John, for co-hosting with me. This was a lot of fun. Again, hope to see you guys on Thursday for our follow-up office hours.
Thank you. Have a good day.